Hey, good afternoon. Welcome to Tool Time. Today, we're working with myself, Robert, and my camera guy, Mr. Paul Fletcher. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing the valving on a D13. So, first things first, safety first. Glasses, rings, jewelry, watches, remove all those. You don't want them getting caught. Set those aside. My timer, just in case. All right, so for some tools that you're going to need for this, is you're going to go ahead and need a breaker bar, and we got a little cheater pipe to give us more leverage, and you're going to need a 36 millimeter socket. And what this is going to do is this is going to fit onto the dampener on the front of the engine to rotate it to get us on our TDC markings. Okay. Next, what you have here is a 16 thousandths and a 24 thousandths. We've already got them pulled out, and this is going to be for our valve measurements. Second is going to be a number 5 Allen. The next one is a 15 millimeter box in, and we're going to use that for our locking cam mounts. And then, once we get everything tightened down, we're going to go ahead and hit it with 15 foot-pounds on the torque wrench with a crow's foot, and I believe this is a 15 millimeter. That's what I said earlier. All right, so for ease of the video, what we did is we already went ahead and taken off the bolts for the valve covers. Now, mind you, this is a school-provided engine, no seals. All right, to also help speed this up, what we did is we put the 36 millimeter on the dampener, rotated it to TDC, and what we did is we verified by spinning it that cylinder number 1 is on the compression stroke. And to help you identify that is if you come along this side, if you notice that both rockers here are pretty even. That lets us know that the valves are timed out just right, okay? And then we're going to be moving along down the train when we go ahead and set everything, okay? All right, so what we'll start with first is we've also went ahead and loosened everything up. We're going to grab our shim. It's not a shim. It's called something else. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Feeler gauge.
Feeler gauge. That's it. Thank you, Mr. Paul. Okay. So, if you look on the backside, come back around again. If you look on the backside to help you identify exhaust and intake valves, is your exhaust side is going to have this spring right here, and then your intake is pretty much just a solid piece. All right, and the general rule of what we're going to do is we're going to go cylinder 1, cylinder 2 intake, cylinder 3 exhaust, and then we're going to jump back here to cylinder 4 intake, and then cylinder 5 exhaust. And what we're going to do is we're going to stop at this point, and then once we get to here, we'll go into further explanation about what we need to do next. So from here, what you want to do is on your exhaust side, you're going to use the 24 thousandths. You're going to take her, slip it right into there. Okay? Sometimes it's easier to use the smaller ones because what you can do is as you tighten it down, they'll stay loose, and then once you tighten the valve, it straightens right out for you. It helps you identify where you need to be at. And what you're looking for is when you go to do these, you want a pretty good grip, almost like 2 pieces of sandpaper rubbing together, so that way you get some kind of grip there. So, take these, make sure our jam nut is removed from the top of the rocker, and we're just going to go ahead and push down. Okay? As we push down, this is a drop, so that tells us we're out of alignment. Just going to twist it, and as you can see, that feeler gauge lines back up. Right about there. And just before, we're just going to hand tighten this just a little bit, just to keep it from rocking. We're going to take this, move it back and forth. Now see, at this point in time, it's pretty stiff. I can't really move it. So what I need to do is just back it off just a little bit at a time. Because when you're doing these valves, if you turn it just a hair, it could be too much. There we go, right about there. To help us keep where we need to be at, take this all the way down, finger tight. Take your open in. Just give her a little twist. Right about there. Just to verify, we're still where we need to be at. So pull that one out. Now, for the intake, we're going to go ahead and use the 1600 side. Flip her over. Pull up the rocker. And that's already pretty loose. So what we'll do is leave that in the up position there. Same thing. Just back this off with your finger. Go ahead and press down. Make sure my feeler gauge doesn't. Now you're not needing to push down, but it's a good habit. However, on the intake, you just want to make sure that this rocker isn't going to be tightened without you controlling it, so to speak. And as I tighten it, you're going to notice the feeler gauge pop back up. Right about there. Back off. There we go. Nice, smooth, and you can still feel it grab. Tighten it down with the fingers. And then give it a little twist with the wrench. Re-verify. Cylinder 1 is set. Okay? So now what we're going to do is we're going to move the insides of cylinder 2 and cylinder 3, keeping with the same pattern that we had stated earlier on the intake and the exhaust. We're going to use 16, this one here. Do the same thing. Set this aside. Loosen up the jam nut, make sure we got plenty of room. Take it down. Feel the gauge is flat. A little bit tighter. Oop, too much. Yeah. There we go. Right there. Take it down, finger tight. You want to maintain your Allen wrench on top of the bolt here. At any point in time, the reason why I say that is if you happen to shift either way, you can throw off the adjustment and you're just going to have to loosen it back up and readjust. Re-verify. Good. That one's set. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go to the exhaust side of cylinder 3 using the 24. Same thing like we did up here. You push down on it. Put the feeler gauge in there. Now that was pretty close to where we're at. Maybe I don't have to do too much. Push down on it and see feeler gauge will wiggle. So what we're going to do is we're going to tighten it back up just a tad bit. Maybe closer to a quarter turn.
He's going to take me out back.
Back it off just a hair.
Yeah.
There we go. Right there. Finger tight on the jam nut. And then from here, what we're going to do is just go ahead and tighten it. Doesn't have to be super tight, because remember, we're going to go back later with the torque wrench. Pull that one out. Now, what we're doing is we're going to jump to the second head here. And we're going to maintain that little rhyme that we were doing as far as intake and exhaust. We're going to start with the intake. What we're going to do is we'll start with cylinder 4, intake, and then jump to cylinder 5, exhaust. Verify my shim. Go to 16s. And as you can tell, it is down a little bit. Back this off, give us plenty of room to play with, and just tighten it down. Back it off. Right there. Finger tight. Re-verify. Oops. There we go. Perfect. Alright, exhaust side on cylinder 5. Jump 24 thousandths of an inch. Put that one in there right there. Back off our cam nut. Now remember on the exhaust side, because of the spring, you want to go ahead and push down on it as you adjust. Watch the feeler gauge level out. A little bit too tight. A little tighter. There we go. Right there. Finger tight. And use the box. There we go. All right. Let me just re-verify this just to be sure. There we go. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead, before I pass it over to my cohort holding the camera, we're going to go ahead and rotate the engine 360 degrees. And what that's going to do is that's going to go ahead and put cylinder 6 on top dead center for the compression. So that way all we have to do is just do the opposite going on the way back to the front. What we'll do is we'll go ahead and do intake exhaust on cylinder 6. And then we're going to do the outside rockers of each cylinder and stop before we get to cylinder 1. Following the same pattern that we've been doing. Intake, exhaust, intake, and exhaust. At any point in time, if you ever get confused after you turn the engine, it's really easy to tell which ones you got left to do anyway. Think about it. On the way back into the engine, we went ahead and did the insides on each one. They're tight. If you forget after here, or after you turn the engine, all you have to do is feel for which ones are still loose. Here, in here, here, in here. Okay? 1.
Hi, I'm Paul, the cameraman now. Robbie is behind there. We have already rotated the engine 360 degrees and brought cylinder 6 to top dead center. And we can verify that by showing that cylinder 1's exhaust rocker doesn't move at all as you push down, whereas cylinder 6's moves. So that way we know that this is on compression stroke at top dead center. As he has said before, we're going to start off by completing cylinder 6, intake and exhaust. From there, we'll move to intake of cylinder 5, exhaust of cylinder 4, intake of cylinder 3, and exhaust of cylinder 2, and then we will be done. So from here, we do intake on, if I can read these gauges, 1/16 of an inch, and we are way out of whack here. So we can leave that and rotate it till it just lifts up, and we should be pretty close there. And once it's good, go ahead and finger tight it. Make sure this doesn't move, and just hand tighten it down. From there, we can flip it over to the 24 thousandths and get this one in line as well. Once it's up, make sure, as we're pushing down on the exhaust, that we have it just snug. There we go. Hand tight it, and just snug again. Now we have done cylinder 6. We're going to move to cylinder 5, intake. Make sure we're on the 16th. Get it so it just lifts. Back it off a hair, and verify that we are just snug enough. There we go. Hand tight it. Make sure it doesn't move. Snug it up. From there we move to the exhaust of cylinder 4. We want to make sure we are on the 24 thousandths. Always making sure that we push down on our exhausts. And once it lifts, we can back it off a hair. And it's just about right. Hand tight it down. Give it a quick snug. We move to cylinder 3, intake. This one is too tight, so we have to back it out to even get the feeler gauge in. And then once that's in, make sure we have it at a right snugness. Launch it somewhere else. There we go. Hand tight it down. Little snug. We do the exhaust of cylinder 2. There we go. Just about right. And hand tighten it. Now, once we have done that, we do know that we have to torque scrub all of our lock nuts. So we can go back through, and at 15 foot-pounds, which has already been set to, oh, there's one to go. Oh, we'll check another one to make sure. That one just. Yeah. Yeah, we're at 15 foot-pounds. Guess these have just been used a time or two. We want to go back and make sure. Yes, that's the braking sound. There's usually a little bit more of a click, I would think. I just want to go through and verify that they are all 15 foot-pounds. I think that is a click. I guess I'm used to an auditory click, not a kinesthetic click.
I have to do it again. It was in my car.
And now they're all at 15 foot-pounds of torque, and all we have left to do is put our heads back on, and you have adjusted. Put your valve covers back on, not your heads. They're already on. And make sure you put it on the right way. And once they are, you have properly adjusted valves.